It's the FIDE World Cup knockout, round 4, and we're into the tie breaks. And I want to take a look at the match between Richard Rapport and Sam Shankland. So Rapport from Hungary, he's been rated well over 2700 for, well, a long time, over 10 years now. 29 years old. I mean, we've seen his games. I've shown his games on the channel before. Such an exciting player. And, well, he's had a little bit of a dip recently. He's number 15 in the world, has been higher. But still, if you remember his game against Praggnanandhaa from earlier in the year, well, just when he's on form, he really is something special. So, he's such an exciting player. But he was held 1-1 in the classical games by Sam Shankland. Now, Sam's been having a pretty decent World Cup, but he hasn't been in great form of late. Now, he's 34 years old. He won the US Championship in 2018. But since then, well, things have been a bit uneven, and he's at number 50-something in the world at the moment. His ELO has dipped down. Didn't have a great US Championship. Scored 4.5 out of 11. So, well, his run of success in the World Cup thus far must have been a bit of a relief to him, actually. He's shown some good chess. Anyway, they drew their classical games 1-1. So they go into the tiebreak. 2 tiebreak games, 15 minutes each, with 10 seconds increment per move. And if it's still 1-1, then it gets faster, 10 minutes, 10 seconds, and so on. But anyway, let's deal with these first 2 rapid play games. In the first rapid play game, Rapport had white. He played e4, and Shankland obviously decided, right, I'm going to put up a strong barrier, and he played the Caro-Kann. Rapport went for the advanced variation, and Shankland continued with this really solid setup, and he just blocked Rapport out at every turn. So, when it came to this position, so an exchange of bishops and then an exchange of queens. So he's not allowing Rapport to show his aggressive attacking side. But Rapport went for him and gained space on the queen side, but a queen exchange. Now, I would say this position is about equal, but Rapport was trying to use this space, but Shankland played excellently. This maneuver I really like. So we can see, okay, it came from a Caro-Kann, but it looks very much like a French defence. And in the French defence, this kind of advance variation, when you get these locked pawns, this f5 square is crucial. So this is a really nice maneuver. And once Shankland played this, you felt black is absolutely fine. This knight looks beautiful here. Consigns the bishop to rather a passive square, just defending these pawns. But Rapport continued to try to make some progress here. He was looking to maybe break with b4, but Shankland got in b6 first. It's still about equal. And this could have ended in a draw very easily. But Rapport wanted to press. And in this situation, for example, I think white could just about force a draw with rook c7 and then give a check. And I think that's a fair outcome from this game. But Rapport kept pressing, and the game turned in Shankland's favour because suddenly the king was in a spot of bother. Knight b6, there we are, that beautiful square, c4 square for the knight. And basically white is collapsing. The g3 pawn dropped. The a pawn dropped. So now Shankland is a whole pawn up. The rooks are off the board. There are no complications. And this, as they say, is a matter of technique. Well, in fact, Rapport really didn't test Shankland here. He took on f6. That makes things quite easy. And in fact, he resigned here. Okay, why exactly did White resign? Well, there's a simple maneuver. Let me show you. So first of all, bishop d6. So just want to attack this pawn. Now, this bishop is perfectly placed. This knight is perfectly placed. So just need to bring this one to g6, attacking this pawn, attacking this pawn. And White is simply overloaded. It's impossible to defend both pawns. So once a second pawn drops, that really is game over. Shankland went into game 2 1 point up, so he just needed a draw. Now, how do you go about trying to get a draw when you're playing with White? Do you go full tilt? Do you just play solidly? What's best? Of course, the best thing to do is try to ignore the match situation and just play normally, but not so easy when there's a place in the next round at stake. So Shankland with White needs just a draw to go through. e4. But perhaps it was predictable that Rapport would play things a little bit differently, and he's gone for the modern. So allowing Shankland to get lots of space. And Shankland plays bishop e3. It's one of the most reliable setup systems for White. So covering d4 very nicely. And then White can choose how to play from here. Sometimes, you can play with knight f3. Sometimes you can play with g3. Sometimes more aggressively. Sometimes f3, h4. They're all possible. Depends how Black plays. a6 from Rapport. Well, again, this is the sharpest way to play. Looking to play b5 and to try to drive the knight away and then try to attack White's centre. Shankland went for g4. So he's really going for it, and fair play. There are calmer ways to play. You could simply play a4 here, for example, and just damp things down. But g4 has an excellent reputation. Caruana has played this on several occasions, many occasions actually, with pretty decent results. He's crushed quite a few players. He also lost a couple of games, but in classical chess, he's done extremely well with g4. Now, the majority of games from this position have gone with b5, and then Caruana's speciality is h4 in this position. I've actually covered this in a test game for my patrons, but anyway, that's another story. But Rapport went knight c6. So, of course, this just puts a little bit of pressure on d4. So White doesn't have such a free hand on the king side. I thought Shankland's response here was very calm. Instead of keeping going with h4, he just played h3, supporting the g-pawn. And with this setup, he's ready to play the knight to e2. Now you can see that the pawn is covered. So knight e2 and bishop g2, just supporting these beautiful central pawns. e5, I mean, that's really the only way to justify knight c6. And again, a very pragmatic move. Shankland just exchanged on e5. Now, d takes e5 is probably the best. But remember, Rapport is in a must-win situation. And even here, I would say White has the better chances. It's not so clear. But, well, I mean, look at white's pieces, basically. You know, white is better developed. Really active pieces. White must be better here. But it's not so clear. But Rapport played knight takes e5. And that is dubious. It keeps more tension in the position, but it is really dubious because it allows white to take the center. Knight goes back to d7 and queen d2. And these pawns are beautiful. I suppose you could say that e4 is the weak point, but how on earth does black attack that? Because you can see bishop g2 and the knight on c3 cover this pawn beautifully. Normally, black wants to get counterplay with b5 and b4 to drive that knight away, but it's very difficult here. In fact, it would be fatal if black played b5, of course, e5, opens up the diagonal, hits the knight. So you can see that if black can't advance the b pawn, where's the counterplay coming? You also can't play the pawn to c6 or c5 to let out the queen because d6 drops with no compensation. And what about knight c5 attacking the pawn? Well, that just loses a piece to bishop takes knight. So you can see black is so cramped here. Rapport tried rook b8, and now Sam played something that's really cruel. Of course, he could have carried on with his own plans, but instead he played bishop a7, knocking the rook back into the corner, and then came back to e3, repeating the position. But it just means that black remains completely bottled up. So black has an enormous issue. I mean, there are virtually no sensible moves here, which drove Rapport to play h5. Now, I think white has several good moves in this position, unsurprisingly. So I'm interested how you would handle this with white. Remember, a draw is okay. That might influence your decision, I don't know. But, well, let's disregard that. What do you think the best way for white to play is in this position? So you have a think. I'll have a drink. Cheers. Sam's move was very strong and very practical. He simply kept the tension, and with this move he threatens to exchange on h5 and just open up the h-file. And if that pawn advances, then the h-pawn is gone, basically. Really vulnerable. So bishop f3 I think is an excellent move. There are other ways to play this. So many good moves here. You could take on h5 and then push the knight. If the knight goes back, well, we might just ram that h-pawn up the board. And if queen h4, then knight d5 is pretty strong. So I think it's possible to take here. g5, of course, maintains white's advantage, but actually, in a weird way, I think it gives black some security. This knight can bounce around here at some point, anyway. e5 is really interesting. Just giving up a pawn and then playing f5, because with the pin on the d-file, black still finds it very hard to move anything. And the bishop is opened up, and white's pieces are tremendous, and there's possibility to push with g5, so something like this. You could go f6, but actually I think this is even better, to put some pressure here. And then knight g3, and could be that white will play queen e2 and then just sack on h5, and I don't think black's king is going to survive. It's just impossible for black to touch these pieces. So let's go back. Anyway, too many good moves for white. Bishop f3, excellent move. Rapport exchanged. Whoa, look at that h-file. Again, black can hardly move a piece. Knight b6 was played. Okay, he wants to come in here, but Shankland exchanged and g5, pushing the knight back. Pawns are still intact, looks beautiful. And of course it's possible just to take the pawn on d6. And black's queen is checkmated. It can't escape the queen exchange, which makes life even more miserable for black. Knight d5, good move. Looking to come into c7 and some other spots as well. So many ways to play, but this is very sound. Just create a mating net around the king. e5. I mean, this is pitiful. The bishop is locked in. And in any case, rook d2. That was the final move of the game. It only takes a knight move for the rook to swing across, or even swim across, and deliver checkmate on the h-file. And what an absolute crush. Really convincing play from Sam Shankland. He said afterwards that he was kind of surprised how easy it was, this match. And it's true, the first game in the rapid play, that Caracan, Rapport just beat its head against a brick wall. Got nowhere. And this second one, well, he got the opening completely wrong. And I think basically misjudged this position. It was far worse for black than Rapport had obviously imagined. So that means Sam the man goes through. Delighted for him. Let's have a look at who else qualified. So let me go through who's playing who. We've got Frederick Svana playing Sindarov. Hari Krishna plays Martinez. Yakubayev plays Sargsyan. Lei plays Donchenko. Dubov Shankland. Well, that should be a really interesting matchup. Grebnev plays Yasipenko, an all-Russian battle. Wei plays Sevian. Aronian plays Erigaisi. Now that's going to be a tremendous match, knowing the styles of both players, both really adventurous. So I think it's round 5 tomorrow, if I've got the schedule right. Let me just check that schedule. So round 5, 2 classical games. Yeah. First game will be tomorrow. That's Friday the 14th of November. So should be really fantastic. Thanks for watching, and remember, patrons, the next live masterclass is Friday evening, 8 PM UK, exclusively for patrons. Expect a Zoom link coming your way very soon.